It is too slow for those who wait, too swift for those who fear, too long for those who grieve, and too short for those who rejoice. But for those who love, time is eternity. Hello and welcome to the Falling Earth podcast brought to you by Avakar. I am Shrajay, your host, and with me is Amit. We are back with another interesting episode, which is on the visible impacts. The internet is full of scary facts on how Earth may come to an end. Some say that it will collapse into the sun. Some say it may be a meteor shower or maybe atomic war. But we know a faster and more visible threat, climate change. We will discuss a very strategic location of its impact. Far, far away from the mainland, where the days and nights last as long as seasons. In the remotest continent to mankind lies the remotest glacier, the doomsday. Amit, why is the melting of this glacier such a big deal anyway?
Right, Rajay. Glaciers are melting everywhere, but only this one has earned the most terrifying nickname, which is for a reason officially it is called the Thwaites Glacier. And it has this massive amount of ice nestled into the western edge of Antarctica, and it is melting at an alarming rate, my friend. Right now, the glacier acts as a buffer between the warming sea and other glaciers. Underneath the ice sheets, the warm ocean water, which by the way is resultant of global warming, is sleeping inside the glacier from the bedrock. So this makes the glacier gradually vanish from the bottom and get thinner at the surface. We can literally see this thin ice sheet surface of it cracking in front of us into thousands of small pieces. Doomsday glaciers alone have capacity to increase the ocean levels by, I'd say, 3 meters. That would mean Manhattan, Brooklyn, Miami, the new Mumbai, and Tokyo would be fully submerged into the sea.
That would be quite a mishappening.
Right, but that's just half of the problem, Shraddha.
Really?
Yep,
I know that we are talking about impacts of climate change, but facts are chilling actually.
that's right, and that's why we need to act on it now. The Doomsday got its name for what would happen after it melts. I'm sure getting there. Behind the glacier lies an even larger body of ice that is protected from Thwaites being intact. If Thwaites would melt away, that much larger ice block will add water to our oceans as well, further driving the sea level. I mean, if this happens, what exactly would happen is still a topic of research, but for sure, it will not be as comfortable, Shajay, as it is today.
I can imagine people living in boat houses. But I would like to get inputs from our audience as well. So, can you imagine living on such an ocean dominant planet? Let us know in the DMs of our social media handles @AvkarInd on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or visit our website www.avkar.org. Maybe that would become a topic of discussion in the following episodes. So, this was about the South. Now, let's head north. If Antarctica is the snow queen of the South, what is that of the North? Greenland is the largest island in the world, and on it rests the largest ice mass in the northern hemisphere. If all that ice is melted, the sea would rise by more than 7 meters. Luckily, it's not gonna happen anytime soon, but understanding how much of the ice sheet might melt over the coming century is a critical and urgent question that scientists are trying to seek answers for. But there is an interesting discovery from glaciers of the north. Amit, can you please throw some light on this research?
Sure, Shrazai. So basically, ice in the Arctic has been depositing for years. I'm sure you're aware of that. Layer by layer. Each year, the snowfall occurs and get deposited. So these gigantic ice structures, it almost look like fossils. They help us in understanding the past of our planet. So scientists just drill a hole in these ice structures and scoop out the ice underneath like a fossil study. The recent discoveries have revealed facts about the atmospheric carbon dioxide. The results say that there was a perfect balance of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere until we started to add it in huge amounts. The curve shot up right from 1800 when the Industrial Revolution began, and now we have recognized a massive 50% of carbon dioxide in the last 150 years. Can you imagine? It's just double what they used to be. So that's how we are welcoming global warming, Shrajan.
That's right. Because after the Industrial Revolution, we started to burn more fossil fuels.
That's absolutely right, Shrajan.
Right. So we have talked about rising global temperatures, but glaciers are just one of the aspects to be worried about. On one night of 25th November, Cyclone Nivar began its landfall at Pondicherry on the Tamil Nadu coast in India. A severe cyclonic storm with terrifying wind speeds. It subsequently weakened, but it led to a huge amount of rainfall in the coastal areas around Chennai and Pondicherry. 2020 has been year of tropical storms, which are charged over open ocean because of high sea surface temperatures. It has been a case of one of the worst scenarios of climate change impacts that has been played out since ever. Amit, what are your views on these events?
Right, Rajay. I think storms are the unseasonal rains and the cyclonic storms have become part of our coastal areas, especially Indian coastals. It surely is a terrifying storm, which you mentioned. I mean, yes, there's a huge property loss. Unfortunately, that's where we all have to, really worry about. Not much lives were lost. Um, but yes, scientists think that this was a result of the climate change, and I'm sure even you'll agree on that. And I'll also tell you why. There's a research from 2019, the special report on the ocean and cryosphere in changing climate. The global oceans has absorbed 90% of the excess heat generated by the greenhouse gases emissions since 1970. This has led to anomalous ocean warming, which in turn makes cyclones intensify rapidly. So, like prior to Nivar's formation in the Bay of Bengal, the climate change has made the Bay of Bengal much hotter. This time, the sea surface temperature were high. In some regions, it was nearly 1.2 degrees Celsius above the normal. And it's known that every zero point 0.1 degree increase in the ocean temperature gives a cyclone an additional energy to feed off. Now, the other less factors for Nivar intensifying is an annual tropical weather fluctuation called the Maiden Julian Oscillation, which is a band of clouds and winds which initiate in the western Indian Ocean, and then it moves to the central India Ocean, and then to the eastern Indian Ocean, and then to the Pacific Ocean. It's like a cycle. So, depending on where it is, it can affect the local weather conditions. Given its current position, the south of Bay of Bengal, they would have provided favorable winds for a cyclone to develop. Clearly, an act of climate change.
That's right, Amit. But if this continues, there is an obvious degradation in our economic systems, right? Currently, it's happening in the form of destroyed property in case of calamities.
Well, that's absolutely correct and a matter of concern, Shajai. Climate change is affecting our economy. In fact, there's a whole new vision added to it according to the research in India. It says the climate change can cause, I believe, a 200 billion US dollar degradation to the Indian GDP by 2030. I'm afraid the figures might be a little fluctuating, Shajai. The rise in temperature reduces the number of hours of outdoor work. The unsafe hours for outdoor work will increase approximately, I say 15% by 2030 as compared to the present levels as per the MGI. So as of 2017, heat exposed work contributes nearly half of the GDP, drive about 30% of GDP's growth, and employs about 75% of the labor forces that would be 80 million people. The report said that lost labor hours due to the increasing heat and the humidity could be approximately 2.5 to 4.5% of the GDP at risk by 2030. So that's equivalent to roughly around, let's say, 150 to 250 billion US dollars.
That is huge, yeah.
Yep. So without the targeted adaptations, around 160 to 200 million people in India could bear a chance of being exposed to lethal heat waves in order to earn money. As a mitigation strategy, India will have to shift working hours for outdoor workers, undertake heat management efforts in the cities, and also consider movement of labor and capital out of high-risk areas. And I think it's already happening, Shraddha, especially during the peak summers.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you do observe this pattern already happening slowly. So adaptation will be challenging for everyone, including you and me. And yes, it would be more difficult for the laborers who will require a capital cost of, like, let's say 20 billion US dollars just to provide air conditioning. So making the city atmosphere livable for them. So which is actually quite a difficult task for countries like India. Do you see where we're heading towards, right? Yeah. So it would be hard that, living in an urban slum probably would be highly uncomfortable. And there would be a need to provide air conditioning if you want laborers and workers in the city. So yeah, so that's kind of like a very challenging task for any democracies right now, especially like India.
So, a lot of things are happening in the world. However, there is a sigh of relief as the global leaders are now considering to undergo development with causing the least possible or absolutely no harm to the environment. Recently, in the G20 conference held on 21st and 22nd November in Saudi Arabia, many global leaders came forward and discussed their approach towards reducing the environmental impact. Prime Minister of Japan, Yoshihide Suga, said that Japan will lead international efforts to combat climate change. He mentioned that Japan will aim for net zero emissions by 2050, making a green society one of his key policy priorities, asserting the fact that climate change is not a constraint of economic growth. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that China would implement its own initiatives, including achieving carbon neutrality by 2060. Japan is taking action to combat global warming, abide by Japanese law. More importantly, Japan committed to its firm timetable for net zero emissions last month, which is a big sign of hope. Followed by Japan and China, Indian Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi said, climate change is to be fought in an integrated, comprehensive, and holistic way, and the entire world can progress faster if there is greater support of technology and finance to developing nations. He also addressed the importance of circular carbon economy approach in the side event called Safeguarding the Earth. He mentioned that India is not only meeting its Paris Agreement targets but also exceeding them. Let me tell you what are these Paris Agreements are. So, India is a signatory to the Paris Agreements under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The Paris Accord was adopted at the United Nations Climate Conference, COP21, held in Paris in 2015 with an aim to reduce hazardous greenhouse gas emissions. India is inspired by her traditional methods of living in harmony with the environment and has adopted low carbon and climate resilient development practices. India is also adopting better solutions based on the modern technology. For instance, India has made LED lights popular and noted that this saves 38 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions per year. As discussed in previous episode, this is a huge amount considering the developing state of India and China, which is creating the Asian brown cloud. There are efforts to eliminate single-use plastics. Forest cover is expanding. The lion and tiger population is increasing. There's an aim to restore 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030, and a circular economy is being encouraged in India. The country is taking a big step by seeking to achieve 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. Mr. Modi said that in the times of COVID-19, when everyone is focused on saving citizens and economies from the effects of global pandemic, it is equally important to keep focus on fighting climate change, which is very great considering India is a developing nation.
All right, Rajay. I think fair enough on the inputs that you have given me. And in fact, speaking to India, there are some really great moments going on which are better from both the anthropological and climate perspectives. For instance, there's an initiative named Global Himalayan Expedition, termed GHE, which has been electrifying remote villages in the Himalayas since 2014. It recently won the UN Global Climate Action Award, GHE conducts impact expeditions from across the world to remote Himalayan villages every year and uses a portion of the expedition fee to fund the capital cost of the hardware, transportation, installation, and training of village scale solar microgrids. So, the microgrid infrastructure set up by these GHE is owned and operated by the local communities there. There are some beautifully happy moments captured and displayed on their social medias in which the villages are enchanted. So, this is a perfect example of a climate compatible development. Total renewable energy for the people living in remote locations, making their villages sustainable. So, I believe this is a great step against climate change. Now, another initiative approach adopted by India is helping in uprooting the menace of carbon dioxide and the air pollution struggle. India recently got its first moss garden inaugurated at Cumon's Nainital district. I believe it's spread across an area of around 10 hectares. The primary aim will be to developing the moss garden was to conserve the various species of moss and other bryophytes and spread the awareness among people about its significance in the environment, apart from creating a recreation spot for tourists in those areas. But a hidden benefit of this is air purification. So these mosses are basically small flowerless plants that typically form dense green clumps of mats, often in a damp or shady locations. The individual plants are usually composed to simple leaves, which we already know are extremely good for carbon dioxide to oxygen conversions. Having a moss grown in large area is similar to having a small forest with very modest nutrients and space requirements.
So we can convert all atmospheric carbon dioxide to oxygen with even lesser amount of nutrients and water requirements.
Absolutely, and also space, Rajai.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That is really great. Actually, we want this change. We all want to breathe the lungs full of air without the fear of pollution. We all want to hear the chirping birds and lush green neighborhoods. We cannot imagine a world without Manhattan's Times Square, relaxing at Miami Beach, the busy moments in Tokyo, or Bombay's Bollywood. Time is to adopt carbon neutrality and act in our own capacities. Because industries don't make up the whole world, but we do. Each time we make compost from our left out garden mulch, each time we click off that electric switch which is not in use, each time we take that jute bag for shopping, we move one step ahead towards a beautiful planet. Our beautiful planet. If you are willing to share your sustainable living ideas, please share with us on our social media handles. For Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, visit @AVAKARIND. You can also write to us on our website www.avakar.in. Best of the ideas will receive exciting gift hampers and will be featured on our channels. Thank you for listening to the Falling Earth podcast. Me and Amit will now take a leave. I will be back with another great episode of the Falling Earth podcast. Till then, thrive and keep the planet thriving.